Good afternoon. I'm Jared. I'm going to be presenting my paper, Liturgical Participation, an Effective Hermeneutic for Individuals with Profound Memory Loss. Thank you for including me in this conversation. I look forward to hearing your thoughts about my paper as I continue to work on my thoughts. The nursing home facility that I work at here in Minneapolis houses about 170 residents. Of those, many are experiencing varying levels of memory loss due to the myriad conditions that result in the symptoms of dementia. Many of these residents live in the regular units within our building. For a select population experiencing profound memory loss, there is the memory care unit. This is a dedicated and locked unit for those individuals who require the greatest level of specialized care. Individuals facing profound memory loss have experienced degrees of marginalization, stigmatization, and sidelining within our society. Unfortunately, this has even been the case within communities of faith. And even within congregate care communities, such as my own, individuals with profound memory loss can experience marginalization from within that community, from caregivers trying simply to cope with behaviors while providing care to a fluid dynamic of residents and their individual expressions of profound memory loss. Congregations, their pastors and lay leaders may find that individuals with profound memory loss are somewhat difficult to include within community activities. It can even be easier to simply sideline those individuals and their carers as primarily objects of care. This objectification, unfortunately, further marginalizes individuals with profound memory loss as non-participating within the liturgical life of the community. Individuals with profound memory loss may be unpredictable in their behaviors, even acting contrary to the community's norms. Their internal dislocation to person, place, and time make it difficult for these individuals to engage with others in a liturgical activity to the degree that they once had. Like their congregational counterparts, spiritual care workers in congregate care settings can participate in these same marginalizing activities. Congregational leaders and chaplains implicitly marginalize these groups by assessing individuals with profound memory loss as incapable or maybe just disinterested in certain activities. An alternative marginalization is the objectification of individuals with profound memory loss as primarily objects of care, rather than fully participating liturgically and adding to and thickening the richness of the community's liturgical life. I would suggest that this marginalization is due to the concomitant effects of an implicit bias of ableism and a liturgical hermeneutic of reception based upon intellectual assent. This marginalization has been exacerbated by the present COVID-19 pandemic. Residents are further isolated by social distancing obligations. Congregations are meeting online or at least in much smaller formats. I would suggest that an alternative hermeneutic that can provide verbiage to both spiritual leaders and lay people that moves beyond the intellectual assent might mitigate these biases. The hermeneutic I would like to suggest, which is liturgical participation, is based upon the dialogue of reception theory through Joss and Martin Luther's sacramental theology, which he calls sacramental union. Liturgical participation eschews the intellectual focus of the above bias in favor of the internal life world of the liturgical participant engaged in dialogue with the life world of the liturgical text. The liturgia of worship is the work of God on behalf of the people, and therefore it is God's life world made available and curated with which the worshiper engages. Liturgical participation as a liturgical hermeneutic strengthens the participatory benefits to both worshiper and presider. This hermeneutic benefits both leaders to see the members with profound memory loss as fully participating, and it engages the worshiper as well as encouraging those members themselves and their family members. These individuals are fully engaged in worship as they progress through the stages of profound memory loss, and are therefore valuable members of the community, thickening the complexity and richness of their home communities and the worshiping communities within their congregate care community. In this presentation, I will provide a brief outline of the challenges facing these individuals with profound memory loss as they participate in worship. I will then outline the dialogue partners of Joss and Luther. I will then close with a brief discussion on the effectiveness of this hermeneutic for challenging the marginalization of individuals experiencing profound memory loss within their communities of worship. So beginning first with what is profound memory loss. It's a complex and varied disease, particularly Alzheimer's, which is the most common form of dementia. Dementia itself comes in many forms, and even within those varying diseases, the effects within the individual are varied, and they can vary over time, and they progress at different rates. However, unfortunately, the end stage of the disease is always the same. This profound memory loss, dementia, is always terminal. According to the Alzheimer's Association, there are 3 stages to profound memory loss that progressively degrades both memory and physical capacity as the brain's capability to access neural pathways diminishes. The first, or mild stage, may not be noticeable to others, but is associated with misplacing common objects or forgetting words. The person may forget the names of people just met, or might find it hard to remember a sentence just read. Their capacity for planning and organizing becomes impaired. An individual in the mild stage may be able to continue to work and to drive. They're capable of being pretty independent. The second, or moderate stage, is marked by an increasing dependence on the care of others. At this stage, the individual may become moody and withdrawn. They become agitated easily, and they can act in uncharacteristic ways. They need help making appropriate decisions, such as dressing for the weather. They might get lost or they wander easily. They may also begin to experience incontinence. This second stage tends to be the longest and can span for years. In the final or severe stage, the individuals require the greatest level of dependence and require ever-present care. At this stage, the communicative level has become heavily impaired. The individual may not be aware of their surroundings, and they're no longer oriented in person, place, and time. They might be bedbound, and so they're more susceptible to infections such as pneumonia. The COVID-19 pandemic has provided an opportunity, unfortunately, for the further isolation of this population, even within the congregate care facilities that they might live in. The present social constraints of the pandemic have combined with the socially isolating nature of profound memory loss and further marginalizes this community. As communities of all types contend with the social distancing obligations, profound memory loss communities have become further isolated. Communities of faith have moved their faith practices to online platforms. These online platforms are difficult for older adults to navigate. I think about my own grandma's attempts at first to navigate her Amazon Prime devices. Imagine the impossibility then of an individual with profound memory loss attempting to access an online service. Even within congregate care facilities, social distancing obligations have greatly curtailed group settings. Residents are not able to visit with family and friends within the facility, nor leave it to visit outdoor spaces or their former homes on a leave of absence. Pastors and other congregational leaders are no longer able to visit residents within their facilities. And even within the congregate care facility community, communal dining, for example, is no longer the norm. Nursing and support staff are stretched thin, with needing to provide closer, individualized support to socially distanced residents. Adding to the increased workload is the increase of anxiety for staff contracting the illness, especially by those considered high risk. The pandemic has not created new points of isolation for the most part, but it has highlighted the ways in which individuals with profound memory loss are isolated and marginalized, even within the systems that are intended to aid and support them. The prevalence of dementia, especially Alzheimer's, is expected to grow in coming decades. With the growth of Alzheimer's and other kinds of dementia, profound memory loss will become of a greater and greater concern to communities of faith. According to the Alzheimer's Association, 5.8 million people 65 years and older in the United States are experiencing dementia. In just 5 years, there will be a projected 22% increase in Alzheimer's diagnoses. By 2050, the total number of Alzheimer's diagnoses within the United States will be 13.8 million people. And with those projected increases, it is imperative that leaders in faith communities orient towards more inclusivity and views of participation within worship. Attending to these individuals as well as their carers and family members in such a way as they are not simply objects of pastoral care will enrich both the community as well as the lives of those individuals experiencing profound memory loss and also their loved ones. It is necessary to be aware of and cope with the consequent challenges then posed by profound memory loss. The dual biases of ableism and a hermeneutic based upon intellectual assent can hinder how members with profound memory loss are viewed as fully participating in the community's acts of worship. Ryan et al. Illustrates the issues facing profound memory loss communities of faith when they write, while individuals with dementia clearly have increased physical needs over a normally aging adult, the mere presence of these needs negatively alters the ways that they are perceived and treated by others. Problematizing these communities, these individuals with profound memory loss, it marginalizes them as objects of care, otherizing them as in an opposition to the undamaged us. This marginalization diminishes both the individuals with profound memory loss and the communities of faith. It is therefore fortuitous that observational studies illustrate that individuals with profound memory loss function in their highest in environments in which they are personalized. According to a meta-analysis of studies on lived space, the concepts of belonging, meaningfulness, safety and security, as well as autonomy, were important to individuals experiencing profound memory loss. The authors noted, quote, "The comprehensive understanding of the categories described is captured by the latent theme. Living with dementia is similar to living in a space where the walls keep closing in," end quote. Therefore, dementia narrows the lives of those enduring the progress of the disease. In certain ways, the above categories provide a way in which we can expand or understand the lived environment. And in developing this hermeneutic, we can point to a place of contact in regards to that environment. If liturgical participation is to be a useful hermeneutic to individuals with profound memory loss, then the above criteria ought to be presentable within the dialogue of the life worshipers, of the life worlds of the worshiper and God. Liturgical participation may aid in supporting the lucidity of individuals experiencing profound memory loss. The hermeneutic of liturgical participation utilizes the works of Hans Robert Joss in his reception theory, as well as the sacramental union of Martin Luther. Liturgical participation provides an opportunity to eschew the intellectually focused hermeneutic of participation used by many Westerners. Andrew Sloan provides a narratively based relational loci for personal identity and participation for those experiencing profound memory loss in how their stories personally, and their stories within the communities that they call home, and the story of God. This relational participatory view of personhood provides us with a departure point for the necessity of liturgical participation as a hermeneutic for liturgy, especially for those experiencing profound memory loss and their circles of influence. Sloane's suggestion of a narratively relational personhood presupposes an embodied quality of our humanness and therefore our value to God and others. This view of personhood eschews the intellectual focus of our current social bias. Sloane writes, "We are embodied beings, and it is as bodies that we experience the world and enter into relationships. Our embodiment and our interconnectedness, as well as our interdependence to others and to God, therefore, is something that cannot be lost, even within the insidiousness of dementia." Luther's liturgical theology of sacramental union and reception theory then formed the basis for liturgical participation. In this approach, the aesthetic experience of a worshiper engaged in dialogue with the life world of God is inhabitable because of its appropriateness. The liturgical text is appropriate because it offers answers to the questions sought out by the worshiper. Therefore, a liturgical experience is appropriate because it has those answers. The aesthetic experience from Joss is equivalent to Luther's happy exchange. Within the happy exchange, the uniting of a believer to Christ is motivated by the existential dread of a life separated from God, fleshed out in the mind of a Christian. And Luther compares the uniting of that believer with Christ to his sacramental theology in the means of grace. Because the aesthetic experience is predicated by the inadequacies of the horizons of the worshiper, motivating engagement with God's life world, the worshiper exits the aesthetic experience with a transformed life world. This frees both presider and worshiper then to let God show up how God wills. The inhabitability of the aesthetic experience is motivated by God's arrival on behalf of humanity. The aesthetic experience can be engaged in over the lifetime because it is ever repeating and ever changing. Liturgical participation is a hermeneutic within the context of profound memory loss because it points to a dialogue between the life world of the worshiper and the life world of the text. The inhabitable engagement with God is a lived space in which these questions can be posed. Exiting out of the aesthetic experience, the worshiper is transformed as she integrates the answers received. It is then that the issues of marginalization and individuals experiencing profound memory loss and these deficiencies that are perceived no longer become an issue, because the hermeneutic of liturgical participation outlined here provides a perspective on participation that highlights the activity of God, engaging the individual as they are in their present moment. It is this particularity that illustrates the helpfulness of this view in the present context. With this hermeneutic in mind, the worshiper, presider, and communities of faith can see individuals experiencing profound memory loss as engaged in the life of God made available in the liturgy. Liturgical participation can be a helpful hermeneutic to understand how differently abled people are capable of engaging in worship, even as their capacities are uncommon within the community. Thank you for joining me in this conversation. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you.